Okay, first let me just do a brief introduction of myself. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on AI's impact across modern sports. I am Rohan Whitehead, and I am a data training specialist at the Institute of Analytics. Recently, I've given a few interviews on the impact of AI across sport, especially football here in the United Kingdom, where football is very big with the Premier League and then other divisions such as the Scottish Premier League and even Welsh Premier Leagues. Today, I want to take the conversation that I've been having a bit deeper and really consider the benefits and the negatives of integrating AI systems into strategy management and player rehabilitation within sports. I'm going to be cross-referencing a lot of examples and case studies in football or soccer if you're American, and also in the Indian Premier League, which I grew up watching as a child. So we need to really consider beyond the headlines what the real trade-offs are when integrating AI and what the future may look like. The point of this webinar really is just to give you an understanding of the one of the main or one of the big use cases of AI across an entire sector, and to really put into perspective how there's positives and negatives to integrating a new technology within an existing consumer sector. For every efficiency gain and for every change you make to an existing customer base and a customer interaction base, there will be downsides and there will be shifts and adjustments you need to make sure you don't lose customers. Sport is never really at risk of dying, and I want to make this clear from the get-go. Even though here and there I may say things such as AI is risking making sports boring, it's a risk of decreasing the satisfaction that consumers have from watching sports, but it will never die. So even though it may seem like I'm being a bit hyperbolic from the very start, this is just in the context of sport and in the context of the consumer context that we have currently. So as I've mentioned, I gave a few interviews on this. One notable interview that sets the context of this talk and webinar very well is an interview I gave for BBC Sport a couple of months ago about AI's impact in football, especially in the context of a Scottish club that was integrating AI into their services and into their analytics infrastructure, with the hope of catching up the leaders of the league in the future. So I'm going to show you guys now a very brief, maybe 3-4 minute snippet of that interview that will help you understand the context of this webinar and really understand what we're talking about and all of the talking points that we are considering. This video will be available on our websites later on, and this whole webinar is being recorded and uploaded onto YouTube. So if you miss anything, feel free to watch it back later in your own time. Let me now change the screen that I am sharing so I can show you the interview snippets. Okay, you should be able to see this. I hope the sound is good enough. Okay. I'm just pausing. I apologize. They do have a fairly strong Scottish accent, so it may be slightly difficult to understand some of what they say. No worries, but it's only a 3-minute clip, and if you can understand it, it does set the context of the talk very well. The voice cannot really be heard. If you can confirm, can you just confirm you can't hear this voice? Okay, that's fine. I will not include that then. Thank you for letting me know, so we didn't waste 3 minutes of staring at nothing. I'll just go back to the webinar. But this video will be available on our website later if you want to watch. Thank you for your feedback. That's very helpful. Sure. Okay, no worries about that. That is my bad. So let's just think about setting the context here then. When you think about football today or IPL cricket, do you think about passion, unpredictability, and instincts? Or do you think about data, precision, and optimization and simulations? Because the truth is, we now live in an kind of era where AI integration and data integration into our sport, alongside passion and unpredictability, are kind of inseparable. Sport is pretty much always defined by the fine margins, but AI and analytics are now defining those margins more than ever before. Um, From wearable sensors tracking players' every movement to algorithms simulating entire matches before a ball is kicked, the way games are played, coached, and watched is changing right now by integrating AI algorithms, tracking algorithms, and learning on historical data more than ever before. Whilst I go through this talk, I want you guys to consider whether a kind of an overarching deeper question. Are we really improving sport, or are we sanitizing it and cleaning it of the human elements that make it entertaining? If AI is optimizing every decision, every pass, and every risk that we take, are we losing the moments that make sport a human entity and something that we want to rally behind? An unexpected goal, a mistake, a slip up, or a heavy, heavy loss, the underdog victory perhaps, or a lucky break that defines a season, that all of these are at risk if we integrate AI more and more into sport without transparency and a bit of fairness. Over the next 40 minutes or so, we'll unpack these kind of three dimensions that I'm about to cover. First, we'll explore what's happening on the pitch, how football and IPL franchises are using AI for tactics insights, player performance, and injury prevention. Then we'll go on to move off the pitch and see um, how in the business world clubs are using AI for marketing, ticketing, sponsorship, and fan engagement. And then finally, we'll consider the fans themselves. Because AI doesn't just change how teams play, but it changes fans and consumer perspectives and interaction points with sport itself. We're going to look at real examples throughout. Of course, sport is very relatable. Everyone has heard of football teams, so it's very good to use real examples. I'll be specifically noting Brighton Albion, a football team in the English Premier League, and comparing their model and AI integration to maybe the Chennai Super Kings in the Indian Premier League, who are using very efficient AI-powered scouting and player tracking to sustain their competition in the IPL. As another thought to consider as I go through this webinar, and it's just a rhetorical question, but if AI did help us have the perfect game, a bit like in chess, where AI is solving chess to the highest level, where there's 100% accuracy on each side, would you still want to watch that game? Is it the imperfect play that makes sport worth watching? So just consider that as we go through this webinar. So if you look back just about 20 years or so, sport was mostly a game of instinct. Managers pretty much always trusted their gut, and scouts trusted their eye and what they saw. Players trusted their intrinsic skill and their understanding of the context of the game and their rhythm. But over time, intuition is being moved slightly to the side and being rapidly replaced by information. This is the case not just in sports, it's in every sector as sectors start utilizing the data that they have more and more. Many of you may have seen the film Moneyball, but this really signifies the turning point where data started being taken seriously within sports. The now famous story of how data analytics transformed baseball. The same mindset has crept into football in the 2010s as clubs like Liverpool, Brentford, and even Brighton and Hove Albion have started um, using hiring data and hiring data scientists alongside traditional coaches. Clubs have started asking that what if we could quantify decision making? What if the data could see patterns that our intuition has missed? And data backing up intuition has really defined how the sports sector and how coaching has changed so far. Today, almost every top tier club runs a data department. They track not just goals and assists, but pressing efficiency, expected threat, recovery speed, heat maps, and spatial control. So many different characteristics of football can be tracked by data. A manager like Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City, doesn't just rely on instinct. He reviews positional data from over 200,000 games per match to refine City's passing geometry. AI tools can now do this job for him. AI tools can now analyze these movements in real time, giving coaches predictive insights into where vulnerabilities are and how teams can attack and defend perfectly. Football, as I've said, isn't alone in sports that are utilizing AI. In the Indian Premier League, data and AI are at the heart of pretty much every franchise strategy. From the Mumbai Indians, for example, who has built an in-house data analytics team that model player matchups and batting orders to the probability of success against specific bowlers. The Rajasthan Royals partner with analytic firms to predict auction value fluctuations using machine learning, and they turn data into their competitive advantage long before the ball is bowled. Hiring sports players and ensuring teams get the best value for their money on players is just as important as strategy on the field, and data is being used to optimize these decisions as well. But the interesting question is, has sports become smarter or has it become safer? When every decision is data checked and probability tested, we may reduce mistakes, but do we also reduce the magic and the risk? When we see AI integration into strategy in general, whether it be in gaming, whether it be in combat, or even in sport, we see that AI prefers possession-heavy strategies. And in the context of maybe football, this means a strategy where you have more of the ball than your opponent. In combat, this is a strategy where you take up the most space or you occupy the most space compared to your opponent. AI will never opt for a guerrilla strategy or a counter-attack strategy, as statistically you have the ball less, so you have less opportunities to succeed. We see similarities like this in chess even, where space is one of the main things that AI sees as an advantage and as an advantageous position. If your pieces on a chessboard control more of the board, you are likely to have a higher scoring from an AI evaluating your game. It is very rare that AI chooses to take a very closed position and a very counter-attacking position, relying more on the opponent's mistakes and tactics. Sometimes sports' most defining moments happen against the data. Often, actually, they are statistical outliers that really make sport magical. If you guys know anything about the Premier League, you may remember a few years ago, in 2016, actually nearly 10 years ago, Leicester City won the Premier League after being promoted from the Championship. Another example is the Chennai Super Kings. They just bounced back in the Indian Premier League after having a very, very poor season. These moments really remind us that unpredictability has value and the value is astronomical in sport. These seasons and these team performances really help build fan trust and fan value and helps consumers really attach emotion and human elements to their watching experience. Data has given us sharper tools and more strategic play. That is without a doubt. But instinct and the human element really still rely and decide. Sorry, instinct and the human element still decides when to take the risk that the data says not to. Often we will see strikers in football go for an egotistical shot, or bowlers do something abnormal to throw the batter off. These decisions aren't decided by data. They're decided by the intuition of the player and the game sense they have. And this is human oversight in the sense that human oversight is talked about in data science a lot. Humans will still be the decision makers, but they will make decisions alongside AI and make informed decisions using AI infrastructure. The tension between what the numbers say and what the heart says will be what keeps sport alive in the future. So we need to talk about AI and performance. Let's actually talk about what AI is doing. When we talk about AI in sports, the first image that often comes to mind is the boardroom, where decisions are made, analysts crunching numbers. But AI's most profound effect might actually be happening on the training ground and on the pitch today, because this is where human potential is really meeting machine precision, as per se. Take football. Today, almost every Premier League club uses AI-driven performance platforms such as Catapult, StatsBomb, or Huddle to track player movement and physical output in microscopic detail. Often during training, each player will now carry GPS sensors that record positional data, maybe 10 positional data points per second even, generating millions of data entries every match. AI analysts will analyze this information to predict player fatigue, injury risks, and optimal training loads. This prevents players being overtrained, players being undertrained, players' muscles reaching injury risks much quicker. In football, there's a lot of injuries, especially an injury to a part of the body called the ACL, that puts players in retirement for much of the season. Using positional data as well as vitals data, we can help with AI analysts to determine which players are at risk of these injuries and then retroactively change our strategies to allow these injuries not to happen. Manchester City, for example, uses predictive analysts and predictive analytics to balance the intensity of their pressing system, how much they press the ball up the field and press the enemy team. They identify when a player's sprint recovery pattern shows the first signs of overload. Similarly, the Liverpool team uses they have a model player availability. So basically, they have probabilities of players across the season that helps Jurgen Klopp, their now ex-manager, decide when to rest players before muscle strain becomes inevitable. So they've modeled all of their players in a model, in an AI model, which analyzes when players should be playing, when they should be on the pitch, and when they shouldn't be on the pitch based on their historical data from training routines. Cricket is very much so going the same way with this transformation, especially in the Indian Premier League. Teams like the Chennai Super Kings and the Mumbai Indians are now using AI-enabled motion capture to break down every batting and bowling session. AI can identify minor changes in shoulder angles or wrist rotation to add spin to the balls that may lead to injuries weeks later. Often you get bowlers getting injured wrists because they have to flick their wrists so aggressively when creating spin on their bowls. And AI can really circumnavigate these risks and reduce them heavily. Many other cricket teams, such as Bangalore, have experimented with machine learning to optimize bowling strategies against specific batters, using those batters' historical data to really make sure that they are using the right spins, the right bowls that target their vulnerabilities. We can use historical ball tracking data and spin rate metrics to kind of predict the outcomes of bowling sessions. And if you guys are really into cricket, this is a really great project for you guys to do in your own time. There's a lot of public available data on cricket and on spinning metrics, bowling metrics, and batting metrics. So studying maybe a player's batting metrics and then determining what their vulnerabilities are based on that data is a really great way to get your hands full. Oh, sorry. To get your hands full and hands on with sports analytics. But there is a cost to all this auto optimization, which I talk about a lot. If every decision comes from a probability model, where does the instinct go? If a batter feels in the zone, if they're in their flow state, but the data says that they're due for dismissal or they're due for a substitution, who wins? The human who's in their flow state and is on form, or the data dictating the options? This is a dichotomy that we will have to solve and coaches will have to solve themselves. There is a kind of paradox of modern performance where the more optimized it gets, the less it actually matters who is doing the performance. Humans become more out of the loop as we over optimize our strategies and our players. So, do we want over optimization? Do we want perfect performance? Or do we want a performance with more personality and more chance of human error? It's the same question I posed last slide. So we're talking now a bit more about coaching and the tactics. We've already lightly touched on this, but I'll go into a bit more details. If data has transformed players, it has also completely reinvented managers. The modern coach no longer walks into dressing rooms with just a whiteboard. They walk in with predictive models backing up their decisions. In football, clubs such as Liverpool, Brentford, and Brighton and Hove Albion are often cited as pioneers in data-led decision making. They don't always have the deepest pockets, the most spending expenditure in this field, but they have built a competitive advantage through information. At Liverpool, under Michael Edwards, who is their data science department, player recruitment and match planning has become a question of probabilities, not personalities. Brentford have famously scrapped their academy and reinvested in analytics using AI-driven scouting models to identify undervalued players in the market who are looking to fit their squad. And Brighton, that is probably the best example, used proprietary analytics to model both player performance and tactical fit. This system is so robust that it has allowed them to replace top players with statistically similar, cheaper options. AI systems can now also simulate match scenarios thousands of times per second to determine the best strategy for each scenario. This is very similar to something called reinforcement learning, where we leave machines to figure out the best strategy to get rewards in a continuous environment. These systems that simulates can now model how pressing changes when the temperature raises by about 3 degrees, as per se, how a shift in formations will alter goal probabilities, and how defending formations will shut down attacks from different angles. These simulations are very useful, and they're not just nice to haves, they are in effect every single week. In the IPL, data is being used the same way. We can think about the Kolkata Knight Rangers, who are using AI to simulate bowling matchups, as I've talked about earlier. Chennai Super Kings, one of the most consistent IPL teams, is now using predictive analytics to determine field placements where the fielders should be on the field and optimal batting orders based on opposition data and stadium micro conditions, such as the humidity, pitch wear, and boundary lengths of each individual stadium. It's worth noting that a lot of the data used is actually opposition data when determining how to win a match. When considering how to analyze a game, you will both want to analyze your own team's performance for optimization, as well as doing vulnerability analysis of the opponent to best understand where their weaknesses are and how to best attack them and open their defenses. With all this precision, though, does come a bit of risk. When every coach has access to similar tools, tactics will become to converge, as I've talked about. Football will become a possession-heavy, predictable, and even potentially sterile game. If everyone ends up pressing in the optimal way and the same way, and everyone moves the same way and shoots in the same areas that have the biggest expected goals, then there will be a homogenization of strategy and the consumer experience of sport will decrease in value. We have seen this slightly happen already. Teams like Manchester City, Bayern Munich, and even some top IPL franchises, their styles, once unique, are now very common throughout the league because optimization has spread to other teams. So we come back again to the question, is sports becoming too perfected? Is it becoming too engineered? If every tactical move can be predicted by an algorithm, should we be doing those tactical moves? Maybe if we can predict what the best strategy is, we can use some game theory and exploit the best strategy instead of you listening uniformly to data. So, in the context of the interview I had with the BBC, one of the most interesting developments this year has come from Scotland, where a mid-table football team called the Heart of Midlothian, or Hearts, were making headlines by making a large investment into their business in AI and analytics. It was about 30% of the net value of the club was being invested into AI and analytics. Earlier this year, Hearts announced a partnership with Tony Bloom, who is the owner of Brighton and Hove Albion, a team I've referenced a few times this talk, and a founder of an analytics firm called Star Lizard, which is known in sports circles as one of the most advanced data operations in the game. Through this partnership, Hearts now have access to elite level data modeling, performance tracking, and AI scouting capabilities that were once out of reach for all but the richest clubs. This move isn't just about numbers, it represents kind of a philosophical shift, the belief that smaller clubs can now compete with giants, not just through financial firepower, but through information and data use. Brighton's rise in the Premier League from a mid-table club to one of the competition has been seen as proof that data use can make you become more competitive with the better, well-performing teams who have richer and deeper pockets. Brighton has one of the smallest wage bills in the Premier League, but they've consistently been punching above their weight. They're using AI-powered data models. Brighton scouts undervalued players from leagues across South America and Eastern Europe, modeling how they'll tactically fit before they even sign. There's players like Alexis McAllister and Mitoma who were discovered and developed this way and then sold for a massive profit, all through data-led insight. This data use is really defining their success in the Premier League. Hearts are now trying to bring that same blueprint to the Scottish Premier League. Their recruitment team can now compare players globally using predictive modeling, matching tactical profiles to make sure that they find the players that integrate into their clubs the best way. But there's a pretty big double-edged sword here. There's a big but here. There's a big downside. Just as data can help smaller clubs catch up, bigger clubs that have more money and have more ways to spend money can over-invest in AI and actually widen the skills gap. If smaller clubs don't have as much money, they will not be able to increase their skill and usage of data at the same rate and at the same acceleration as bigger clubs. So before the level playing field becomes more apparent, there may be a period of time where the better clubs get much better than the mid-table clubs that can't invest as much. Elite teams are often showing to be willing to overspend and outspend just to outcompete other teams. We saw this with Manchester City about 10 years ago when they spent billions of pounds on players to make a way stronger team than anyone else. They actually got into regulatory trouble for spending too much money on their players. The modern fan is not just a spectator anymore, they're also part of the data loop. They give impressions and help the sports industry make their money. Football clubs now use AI to personalize the journey from start to finish, the fan journey, that is. Apps like the Premier League's official platform or the Fantasy Premier League, and club-specific apps such as that from Manchester City and Arsenal use AI to generate real-time insights during the match, tailored to individual interests. They recommend highlights, fantasy football picks, and merchandise based on what you've clicked on before. These recommendation algorithms are nothing new, but it's good to know how it's being integrated into the world of sports. Broadcasters are doing the same thing during the 2024 to 2025 Premier League season. Sky Sports used generative AI to produce instant post-match summaries in multiple languages. The algorithm even adjusts tone depending on whether you support winning or losing teams to make it more relatable to you. It is clever, but it can be seen as slightly eerie. The line between engagement and manipulation is very thin. Sports teams want their fans to engage and they want their fans to relate to the content. But at some point, if we tell too many white lies or manipulate our content and personalize our content too much, we do start manipulating the data to force interaction and engagement. In the Indian Premier League, AI powers very immersive augmented reality experiences that lets fans point their phones at the pitch to see live batting analytics or ball trajectories. The Royal Challengers in Bangalore trialed an AI-powered fan zone that predicts match outcomes ball by ball, creating a real-time gamified experience for viewers. There's no doubt that this makes sports much more interactive, but again, like everything else, it's raising questions. How much personal data is being collected for these use cases? And are fans engaging because they love the sport or because algorithms are nudging them to stay longer, spend more, and share more of their own data? AI can make fandoms deeper and it can really build brand loyalty, but also it can also make fandoms more curated and personalized to each different team's story. It's turning sport from kind of a shared story to a personalized feed where each fan has a different experience. Perhaps maybe the biggest challenge for teams and leagues now is the sense of keeping the community alive in a world where every fan's version of the game looks slightly different. When we talk about AI improving sports, fairness is usually the first promise made, but also the hardest one to keep. If you have looked at football in the past years, there's something called VAR, which is a virtually assistant referee that was meant to end controversy in the regards to whether the ball is out of play, whether goals are legal, and whether everyone is following the rules of the game. But in some ways, it's actually done the opposite. The 2023 to 2024 Premier League season saw record delays and frustration as VAR checks stretched games going on longer and longer than the 90 minutes allocated to them. For every VAR check, the game had to be paused as referees consulted television assistants. It also eroded spontaneity. After your team had scored, the fans now don't know whether to celebrate immediately. There's always a rumor that it may be being checked by VAR. They need to see the referee award the goal and then they need to dodge a VAR decision. VAR has become so common in football that it is really shaping how fans react to positive moments in the game. An AI-powered semi-automated offside system is also being trialed to reduce delays. But fans still argue that precision is coming to the game at the expense of passion. It is those mistakes that make football really rememberable. I believe it was the 2016, it may have been the 2012 World Cup, in one of the final rounds, England lost to Germany after scoring a goal that was disallowed because we didn't have goal line technology. England scored a goal, but the referee did not see that the ball went in, and many England fans argue this changed the course of the match, leading for Germany to stomp England and eliminate them from the World Cup. Now, you can take either side of the argument here. You can take the argument that this is a terrible mistake that should never happen, and we should have technology in place that make the rules of the game be followed and reduce refereeing mistakes. Or you could take the other side of the arguments and take the more cynical side that it was extremely entertaining and it was a talking point of the sport for future fans to talk about. It has helped group England's sentiment around the mistake and has really created two different stories and two different narratives that shape the passion around football. We've seen similar debates in cricket with the decision review system in the IPL using ball tracking and edge detection to make line ball calls. It's accurate, but it's also changed how players appeal and how umpires make decisions and even how commentators describe the game. When technology is becoming the final authority, human instinct starts to fade, and this can never happen. Integrity is another growing battlefield. AI systems are now monitoring and betting markets and social sentiment to detect match-fixing signals. This is really important to keeping the game integral and game integrity high. The International Cricket Council and UEFA for football both now use predictive fraud analytics to flag unusual betting patterns and performance patterns, an invisible layer of defense for the sport's credibility. There is without a doubt that this is needed as there is so much money in the sports betting market. But there's also a bit of a paradox. If we automate fairness more and it feels less human. Fans accept human error because it's part of the story and part of the narrative, and it's what keeps games and sports alive. The missed offsides, the marginal LBW in cricket, the moment of injustice that sparks debate. If you remove all of this, you're removing emotion from sport. AI can make sports more accurate, but it also strips away the moments that make it unforgettable. And I'm unsure personally whether that can really be counted as progress. At some points, we need to value the human element of the game more than optimizing decisions and processes. The real challenge isn't just replacing referees or umpires with AI, it's finding the right balance where technology supports human judgment, not overrules it. And the truth is, AI still often fails. Sometimes it fails spectacularly. Sports teams and broadcasters are discovering what many businesses already know with generative AI. Large language models and analytic streams can be brilliant, but they can also be very unstable. They can stall, they can misinterpret data, or they can generate results that truly are just incorrect or inaccurate. These results may change subtly every time you ask it the same questions. Imagine a football club running live performance analysis mid-match, and the model suddenly mislabels a player or drops a data feed. Or think of an IPL broadcaster trying to use a generative AI to produce live highlights, only for the system to clip the wrong delivery. This sounds minor, but in a live context, it's catastrophic, and it greatly changes how analytics work and how broadcasts are viewed. Even in an analytics lab, consistency is a challenge. When you can't pick up exactly where you left off, every failure means starting again and using more compute power and money. The result? Often frustration, wasted resources, and growing skepticism from coaches and executives on what tools that they can trust. They know that they can trust human oversight, though there will be growing skepticism as to whether they really need to invest so many millions of pounds and dollars into AI technologies just for them to sometimes fail. These are not theoretical problems, they're already happening. Analysts at Liverpool have publicly discussed the difficulty of managing fragmented data streams, GPS data, biometric readings, and video feeds, all coming from different systems at the same time. These feeds of data don't always align and can make decision making very difficult. In cricket, the BCCI performance unit has faced similar integration issues when syncing wearable data from multiple device brands across multiple different franchises. Until we fix, sorry, I've lost my slide. Yep. Until we fix these basic issues of reliability and continuity, the promise of seamless AI integration will just remain a promise. Because in sports, position isn't always optimal. One wrong data point can change a match report and a transfer decision, or even a player's career. At this Institute of Analytics, we believe one thing mostly, and that is AI is only as good as the human oversight it is paired with. Coaches should never be ignored. Instinct and gut intuition from experience should never be ignored. This principle applies everywhere, but in sports you can see it play out in real time. Every algorithm is only as good as the people interpreting it. Every dataset reflects human choices about what to measure and what to ignore. And every successful AI system in sport has one thing in common: a human who knows when not to listen to it. We've seen this across football. At Brighton and Hove Albion data drives everything from recruitment to match tactics, but the decisions still rest with the coach. The model may recommend a formation, but the coach decides when the rhythm of the match dictates that you use that formation. In the IPL, Chennai Super Kings rely heavily on performance analytics, yet the captain is renowned for trusting his instincts at critical moments, choosing to bowl a specific player based on his feel, not data. And more often than not, he is right. The balance between instinct and insight is what defines a responsible use of AI. Without oversight, technology becomes self-referential, chasing optimization for its own sake and not properly understanding the context that it is being used in. But when guided by human judgment and human professionalism, it becomes something more than a creative partner. At the Institute of Analytics, that's one of our core missions, to make sure people understand how to use AI successfully. We train professionals not just to use AI, but to question it, to know its limits, and to interpret its outcomes in a way to build systems that enhance rather than replace human decision making. Sport really does offer the perfect metaphor for this philosophy. A model can process every pass, every shot, and every delivery, but it cannot feel momentum. It cannot see when a confidence is returning to a player. It cannot analyze the crowd's energy and shifting the tone of the match. That's very much so human territory. The most enhanced AI we have right now will not replace that, and it will depend on these factors and for the coach to use these factors to combine it with AI strategy to make the perfect decision. As AI becomes embedded across sports, in coaching, business, and broadcasting, the real differentiator will be not who has the biggest data set, but who has the best understanding of what the data means. And that understanding will always come from the people. As we look ahead, the future of sport will not be defined by whether AI is used. That debate is already over. AI is here to stay. Every major sport, from football to cricket to Formula One to tennis, is being reshaped by algorithms. AI is predicting tactics, reducing injuries, managing finances, and personalizing fan experiences. For the next 5 years or so, we'll see systems become even more embedded and integrated into strategy and in sport. We'll see AI coaches, AI assisting managers in real time, predictive officiating matches, making faster calls, and broadcast content created dynamically for every viewer. In football, the next frontier will be AI-driven tactical co-pilots. And in cricket, the next frontier may be AI ball tracking and biomechanical analysis. It sounds exciting, and it is, but the progress will come at a price. The great irony, as I have said, and I really do want this to be a takeaway, is in the pursuit of perfection, we may lose what makes sport perfect, and that is imperfection. This sounds very cliche, but it is really a consumer sentiment when it comes to watching sports. Sport is, at its heart, an emotional language. It's about risk, chaos, and momentum. It's about moments that swing from happiness to sadness, and that no one can script. Leicester City's Premier League title, Donny's last ball finishes, the unexpected penalty save, and the upset LBW is something that rewrites sporting history. The challenge for the next decade is to find an equilibrium between using AI to optimize strategy and decision making without flattening unpredictability. This means regulation, transparency, and above all, restraint. It means remembering that ultimately the purpose of AI is not to remove uncertainty, but to help us understand it. If we can achieve that balance, then AI will not replace the beauty of the sport, it will enhance it. It will help us appreciate just how fragile and how extraordinary human performance really is. So thank you for joining me today. I know that was a lot of talking by me. We've kind of explored now how AI is changing every frontier of sport, but the notable downsides and the risks that it has attached to it. These risks are huge, but this doesn't mean that we should stop thinking about AI and integrating AI into sport. That will happen anyway. That's just the direction that technology is taking us. We just need to understand the upsides and the downsides and the trade-offs so that we can integrate AI into sport in a way that does not negatively impact the consumer experience of the game. At the Institute of Analytics, we believe that the future of sport won't be decided by algorithms, but how people choose to use them. And this is why education in AI and in how to interpret AI decisions is so important. So as we move forward, let's not ask what AI can do for sport, but what it should do for sport. Because this latter question is the correct way and the correct perspective when using integrating technologies into a new sector. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now. If not, thank you for joining me on this webinar, and I'll see you again in the next webinar next month. This webinar will be uploaded onto YouTube, and it will be re-recorded and uploaded in snippets and smaller digestible content if you need. But for now, thank you for joining me on this webinar. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope it opened your kind of eye onto the potential impact of AI across modern sports, especially in football and cricket.